What is going on, guys? Welcome to the J Powell Music Channel, where we discuss all things J Powell is excited about, passionate about from a musical standpoint. So be sure to like and subscribe here in the channel if you are interested in any of those things. I also do a podcast, specifically a guitar podcast, the 440 Guitar Podcast, where I interview a lot of great musicians. I play video games as well and have a video game podcast with my friend Arthur Thomas, the Gamers for Life podcast. 80 episodes in on that one. Just hit at 80 episodes. And I do a music review podcast with friend Preston Budd. His podcast, The Music Buds, where we review albums that no one's, not the main populace, hasn't really heard of. So introducing you to new music when it comes to R&B, hip-hop sense is kind of a lot of the albums that we review on that channel. And the channel is kind of like all the above, everything that that I'm just been passionate about for music over the years. And a place to really rant about those things because I haven't really been able to do so because it's been out of context from my other podcasts. So this is kind of the filler of just music loving things that I've been into. So feel free to like and subscribe if you're down for that. And the cool thing about this channel, first of all, thank you for whoever's been watching these. It seems like my Mars Volta videos have gotten the most views so far, which I think is great. I'm a huge fan of Mars Volta. I'm a huge fan of Omar Rodriguez Lopez. To me, he is the Frank Zappa of today. He's my favorite artist, to be quite honest. And yeah, so just very, just amazing stuff. And today I wanted to talk about something that I'm sure a few other people have talked about. And this is more of an introduction video because I'm curious if you guys would be interested in more videos around this particular topic when it comes to the Mars Volta. So obviously the videos that I got the most views on for Mars Volta has been leading up to the new Mars Volta album. Because the first couple songs have just got launched the first time in 10 years. They're rolling out the new album. So I'm keeping tabs on that, and I will continue to keep tabs on that and let you guys know my thoughts on those tracks as they release up to the release of the album. I'll obviously give you an album review. But I wanted to pose a question. One of the most renowned albums that Mars Volta has completed, their pieces of work, has been Francis the Mute. And for those of you who are not familiar with Francis the Mute, if you are a Mars Volta fan, or if you've heard of the Mars Volta, you probably have heard of Francis the Mute. But again, if you haven't, I highly recommend for you to check Francis the Mute out. To me, it is one of the most ambitious pieces of music that's ever been created, in my personal opinion. An incredibly deep and intense, just great pieces of musicianship all around, across the board. But to get even deeper, I wanted to pose the question: is Francis the Mute the greatest concept album of all time? I'm a big fan of concept albums. I think, to me, it's great when you're making music and you're writing a song about your dog, your cat, your loved one, whatever. But I think when you're able to contextualize your message throughout an album, I just think it's even more powerful stance. There's a lot of great other concept albums, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, concept album, Roots Undone, concept album. And these are just the things that are just popping out of my head in general. And Francis the Mute, obviously a concept album. But for me, this is such... The story behind Francis the Mute in itself is incredibly deep. And I had no idea... I'll be honest with you guys. I had no idea how deep the story was for Francis the Mute. And I'm going to read off the first song... And essentially kind of setting up what the story is supposedly is for Francis the Mute. Because everything that I've found out online has been through blogs and Reddit threads, things like that, people that have kept tabs on it. And then Genius has kind of broken some stuff down, but you guys know how Genius works. It's fragmented through the different phrases throughout, each song, etc. But once I started reading the supposed story of Francis the Mute, I was like, this is incredibly deep. You know what I mean? Like, this is really deep, really intense. Obviously matches the music. And I've always thought Omar Ruiz Lopez and Mars Volta, they've been great. It's great music thematically. You know, even before Omar was, you know, working on films and scoring films, um, and it might just be based on when I started to get into his music, but I knew in general there's a really great thematic sense along with this musicianship. And this is Mars Volta days where he was very meticulous, probably like overly meticulous, but I mean, this is insane, in a good way, sounding music, and just you're getting some of the most incredible musicianship out of this concept album. So without further ado, I wanted to read the first song, which kind of, one, sets up the story, and two, sets up the story for the first song as well. Now, for the Francis the Mute, it's a total of 12 tracks. It's a total of 12 tracks, and this is based on Spotify. And from my understanding, that this is all of the tracks, and they're broken down into different pieces. Okay, so it's broken down into Cygnus, Visman, Cygnus, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing this not correctly. The Widow, and then Elvia. Miranda the Ghost, the Miranda that Ghost just isn't holy anymore, and then Cassandra the Gemini, and then that's broken down into various parts. So I wanted to read off the first song, which sets up the story, and I will obviously give a disclaimer saying I don't know if this is exactly true. It does seem to line up with a lot of the things that are in the actual recordings of these songs, and there's a lot of different people on the internet that has said, like, yeah, that is connected to this, that is what this is about. And I'll go further into some other theories, just because I feel like nothing has really been proven fact from my understanding. I got a couple of really amazing Mars Volta fans here on the channel, and they've given some really cool comments on the comments on these videos. So if you guys are familiar with anything that Omar Rodriguez Lopez or Cedric Bixler, if they've said anything about like the story behind Francis the Mute, like to confirm this stuff, please let me know in the comments. I haven't seen anything online where they have actually said, yeah, that's right. You know what I mean? I think part of the mystery is why they don't want to do that. But let me know, you know, send a link to an interview or something like that, please, in the comments. But I'm going to read this here. This is from SputnikMusic.com. Of course, this is a blog, a thread. And this gentleman posted this, let's see, at the Parts Volta, at the Sparta Volta, 2004, and he posted this. It's pretty long, but I'm gonna talk about the first part. So I'm gonna say this here in quote: "Hello, as you well know, Francis the Mute is a concept album by the Mars Volta, which tells an amazing story. Even if you aren't in the band, you may be interested into the story. Just thought I'd share." And he goes to the first song. So Visman Cygnus is a 25-year-old HIV positive, drug addicted prostitute. He was born to Francis and is the product of a rape. He was either abandoned or simply adopted out to another family. He is on a quest to unravel the mystery of his origins. He seems to have some deep guilt going on, and having been born male, thus involuntarily aligned with the sort of male aggression that leads to things like rape and murder. He seems keenly tuned into the rape and murders that occur in the world around him, seemingly making reference to the Juarez murders, all brutal tombs, 500 little Qs. I'm splitting hairs to match the faces, and the deaths of innocent civilians due to the U.S. military presence on the island of Vieques, Puerto Rico, end quote, in the verse in the song. "And with every body that I find, and with every claymore that they mine, I won't forget who I'm looking for," end quote, unquote. Quote, "On the other hand, he is described as one frequent client as knowingly having unprotected sex with his clientele. thus exposing them to possible infection, in which he doesn't seem to be concerned in the least. It appears that in the final song, Cygnus takes his revenge through raping and effectively murdering. Since in so doing, he spreads his disease. 25 people, thus becoming one, in quote, one of the others, becoming a very thing that he most fears, despises in other men. So, needless to say, just to start the album, definitely not something that the old kids should hear, right? But a really intense, serious tone here. Yeah, so that's kind of the initial starting point of the album, and then it breaks down further. Let me read another one here. This is the second song, The Widow, just to kind of get a little more deep into it, and then I'll stop there and I'll continue on here the rest of the video. But it says, continuing, the widow is a person of intimate gender, having been previously described as a viudo masculine is what it means apparently, which has subsequently been translated to the widow feminine. It seems that if the loss of their partner has been relatively recent, as they have racked by a profound grief and loneliness. For this reason, they turn to Cygnus' professional services and become rather addicted to him. They are initially in a bit of denial about the nature of Cygnus' illness. He coughs and wheezes a lot, but as they tell their story, it becomes clear that deep down they know he has AIDS. They feel great shame about paying for sex, especially from someone as evidently defiled as Cygnus, but would much rather feel that than the aching emptiness that sleeping alone would bring. They yearn to be infected by Cygnus so that they might finally have hope for a speedy death and reunion with their beloved. So already it's like, whoa, like this is really dark, like really intense, you know what I mean? But there's so much detail around this, you know what I mean? So it's just, I think as far as being a concept album, I mean, you're setting up so many plot points. You're creating this narrative that's just, I mean, it's a really it's a lot of narrative built around this. Now, yeah. So I wanted to ask for y'all. I want to do a deep dive, like a super deep dive of Francis the Mute being one of the greatest, to me, arguably, greatest concept album of all time. Would you guys be interested in a deep dive of Francis the Mute? Just diving in song by song, breaking down certain things, thoughts and whatnot. I know there's things like this on the internet, but I'm just such a fan. And for one, knowing that this Francis the Mute album has this overly contextualized, I mean, I should say overly, but deep contextualized story. Is that something that you guys want to see a video on? And obviously I'll try to make it a little more snappier. But when it comes to another thing that I found interesting, and again, this is a blog post, so we don't know what's real and what's not, it seems like. Someone else said that the story is based on a diary that they found, so it is either based on or inspired by true events. I thought that was interesting. But once again, I don't know if this is real. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if Maurice Lopez or Cedric Bixler, if they did end up finding something like that, right? So let me know your thoughts. Do you think Francis the Mute is the greatest concept album of all time? If you're a fan of it, tell me why. And also, if you'd like to get a deep dive of Francis the Mute, let's just dive in. Let's just dive in and into this crazy, amazing story. And yeah, that is what I wanted to talk about here for the J Powell Music Channel. Again, be sure to like and subscribe here to the channel so you can get more of these think pieces and everything. Again, I appreciate you watching the channel, and I am your host, J Powell. Thanks a lot.